In the beginning, they both thought they were just going to play trombone. During their study of trombone and finding their love for music, they discovered their love of each other. Kristine and David Natseway share how music became one of the threads that ties them together forever. Next on OTP.
And welcome to OTP, David and Kristine. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having us on.
Good to be here.
I love the instruments in the back. Thanks for the setup instead of my corny thing that I've got here. That's great. I love. Now you got a sousaphone back there.
Yeah.
Whose sousaphone is that?
That's mine. It's the horn I used to play in high school. And
would you steal it?
they were gonna trash it. They were gonna send it to disposal. And it's a 1958 Con 20K naked lady sousaphone.
Oh.
And it's a vintage horn, and they were gonna send it to disposal. And I happened to use some of my familial resources, and I was able to get my hands on it, and then I had it overhauled. To cost I don't know, about like $500 to get it overhauled, and it's in great condition.
Oh man, that's sweet. I'm trying to think back on my instruments in high school. They were all school instruments. I wouldn't have been able to grab it. That's great. And a trombone. Tell me about the trombone on your right.
Oh yeah, that's my Holton 181 bass trombone. Yeah, okay.
Cool.
It's one of two that I own, and yeah, it itself, I guess it could be considered a vintage horn. I mean, it's 77. I think it was that one was built.
There you go. All right. Well, ladies first. Kristine, thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate it. First of all, where are you from, Kristine?
Kind of grew up a lot of places, but kept returning back to East Texas a lot. Started and finished. Started school there, and I finished high school there. So.
Okay. Do you have sisters and brothers?
I do have one older sister and a couple half siblings. Yeah.
Right. Do they play? Does the music flow through the family? Or what's happening there?
Well, my sister was she started on flute because my mom played at home a lot when we were growing up, and we just had a flute in the house, and then there were no more instruments, and so I ended up getting to pick. I don't know if she picked flute or not, but she turned more into a visual artist. Okay. So still really artistic. Yeah.
There you go. So you started out playing early in your school career when you first started playing trombone.
First started in it was middle school, like most, and yeah, my grandparents took me to that night where the stores come and they ask you what instrument you want to play, and I knew because of my earlier years I'd gotten to play trombone, and it was just so obnoxious. I loved it. The sound. Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. What brought you to that sound in the trombone?
Oh, well, my family moved to Southern Mississippi, University of Southern Mississippi. My parents were going to school there, and we lived in the married student housing for a couple of years. And they used to have these yard sales, and this guy, there was 200 families on this giant field, and everybody wanted people to come to them. So this guy, he started making a lot of noise with a trombone. I guess he was trying to sell his trombone, and he started making a lot of noise with it. And of course, he was like the Pied Piper. He got a ton of kids around him, and we were able to try it out. He would hold it for us, and he taught us how to buzz this, make the sound and everything. So I got to try it out and move the slide. And I was like, and I was kind of hooked from just how just raucous the sound was, and he was probably the band in the marching band over there.
And that sealed this deal for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, David, I found this was kind of strange. You started out a little bit on trumpet, correct?
Yeah. So the same thing when the schools, they did it a little different when in Winslow, Arizona, where I grew up. So what they did was they would feature they went around to the classrooms and they would feature a particular instrument. And this is how they figured this is how they could get an even balance of, I guess, instruments. Because if you only show the class one or two instruments, then you get interest in that. So, and then the high school band and choir and orchestra, they would come over to the school and give us a concert, So after all that, I actually wanted to play violin. And but the band directors, because I have older siblings that were already in band, the band directors said, no, you're going to play trumpet. So, so I started out at trumpet, and I already had like I had an aunt that played trumpet, and so they passed her horn on to me, and so I played trumpet for like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, 7th grade. When I got into 7th grade, we had 14 trumpet players. And we auditioned at the beginning of the year, and I scored 14th. So, we only had one French horn player. So the band director asked if there was anybody in the trumpet section that wanted to play French horn. So, so I was sitting at the bottom of the section. So I just, I said, yeah, and the only French horn player was this transfer student, and she was this little blonde girl from Michigan, I think. And so, yeah, I want to sit next to her. So, I played French horn for a year, and it was difficult for me. So,
right.
And then that's when I talked to my brother because my brother was a trombonist, and
right.
I asked, if he would teach me to play trombone, because Winslow had a summer band program where they would take all the new incoming students and the continuing students and put them into groups and beginning lessons and stuff like that for about a month before the school year started, so that way everybody was prepared for the school year.
So that was my next question was, how was that learning from your brother? He's your older brother. What's his name? We've got to give him a shout out.
Daryl. Yeah, my older brother Daryl. Yeah, he was a trombone player and moved to bass trombone. And I think he's probably the reason I play a Holton trombone, because he always had those brand new Holton bass trombones that were coming out back in the 70s. He had an old what was called let me see, the Holton TR-180, and it had what was called a magic bar. Had this. I was just fascinated by the size of the horn. And so I started on a Holton tenor. Actually, I started on an older horn that belonged to our grandfather, and that's the horn he learned on.
Right.
And my grandfather actually taught my brother how to play trombone. And I got a picture. I don't know. Let me see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's my grandfather, Tom Natseway. So
God bless him.
He was, I guess he learned trombone when, back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, when they were taking a lot of the native kids and sending them to boarding schools. So he was sent to a boarding school in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
And that's where he learned to play trombone.
Wow.
And,
what a story.
And he got good, so he started playing around in LA when he was young. And he told me stories of getting a gig on the Herbert Clark, like all the trumpet players know who Herbert Clark is.
Sure,
he said he got a gig playing on the Herbert Clark dance band when he was young. And since Herbert Clark was tied in with Sousa, whenever he said there was a time when Sousa's band came out to the West Coast on a tour, he got to play a show, sit in with the Sousa band at one time. So so he had some pretty amazing stories, and I think that's probably where, I think we fell into that. It's like, man, I want to create my own stories.
Right. Yeah. There you go. That's why this is such a great episode, because from what I'm seeing, we've got both of you on two different worlds, and music is going to bring you together, but you had no idea. Kristine, you talked to us a little bit about you studying with Dr. Neil Humfield there and your experience with him.
Yeah, so he's a huge name. I didn't know it when I met him. I mean, it was kind of apparent how great he was when I met him, but there's an excellence in teaching award that's given every year now with his name. He passed when we went into the military, like right around the same time. But I started studying with him in he was at East Texas State in commerce, and now it's something else like A&M or something. But he taught there for a whole lot of years, and it took about 2 hours to drive to the lessons, and my mom would take me. She didn't mind. She actually went to East Texas State when I was really little, when she was working on her master's. And so she would drive me to Commerce, and I don't know, I guess I should go get coffee or something and I did a lesson. But he was so amazing. We worked a lot on competition for region and area and state and all state and all the competitions that I could get into. And he was a student of Emory Remington, and he had that Eastman sound, and it's something I still strive for. Every time I pick up my horn, any horn. I always strive for that.
Yes. We're going to get into talking about the practicing. I just got through practicing, and I never get to that end. It's an open-ended hole.
Right?
Yes. And now let me see if I got this right, David. You were studying with Dr. James. Give me his last name. I don't want to mispronounce it. Gould. That's right.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, so he was after my brother. Dr. Gould was my first formal teacher, and that was through the Northern Arizona University music camp that they had every year. And all my siblings went to the camp, and our kids went to the camp as well. So
right.
But he was the trombone professor at NAU at the time. And so when I was first starting out, between my 8th and 9th grade year, because I'd only been playing trombone for a year when I went and to music camp as a trombone player. He had a real knack for dealing with young players. He could find a way to communicate. And I just remember one of the first things that he talked to me about was getting warmed up, when you start playing. And he was able to talk to me about my interests and relate it to playing. So at the time I was, I was a baseball player, and he asked me what positions I played, and I told him I pitched, and he was like, oh, so what do pitchers have to do before they start the game? And I said, well, you have to warm up. And so he was able to relate that, to playing, and like the things that pitchers do to warm up, he was able to relate to, well, that's similar to what you have to do when you start playing, before you start playing your trombone. So he was and he was a very, very kind, very gentle person, and he had this amazing library of literature in his office, and it was pretty impressive, and he was pretty close to retirement at that time, because by the time I think he had only a couple of years left, as an instructor, because by the time I graduated high school and attended NAU as a student, my brother again he was the graduate assistant, so I had to study with my brother again, and I do say I had to study with it was a lot different studying with him as a more accomplished player than it was as a beginner. He was a little more stern about his approach.
Sure.
Yeah, but Dr. Gould, it was a really nice experience, and later on, after playing for a while, and there was the Flagstaff Symphony in town, and my brother was the bass trombonist for the Flagstaff Symphony.
Okay.
And then once he started teaching, he got hired in another town, back in our hometown, actually, I think is when it happened, in Winslow. He became the high school band director there. That spot opened up, and I auditioned for it. And by that time, Dr. Gould was playing viola in the orchestra.
Okay.
And I just remember after auditioning and winning that spot and sitting in the rehearsal, he was sitting at the back of the viola section. He turned around and looked at me, and he smiled, and he winked.
That's great. In watching you both, do you all, as a couple, do you all ever just, are you in amazement that you look back at both of your journeys, and then you realize how you came together? Is it just in awe, or you just take that for granted?
No, I think just as chance has it, it's just the way the things lined up, when I was going into the Navy, I was scheduled to go in a lot later than I did. Okay. But it just so happened a spot opened up in boot camp.
Right.
And so they wanted to send me earlier.
Okay.
So I went in earlier, and
and I was supposed to be in boot camp, in Marine Corps boot camp, for 12 weeks, and I got injured. So I was there for 16 weeks. So it added another month. I had to spend Christmas there. The timeline just worked out, I guess.
See, okay, so I want to set this up for our audience. In full transparency, Kristine did her student teaching with me back in the day. And you told me this story about meeting your husband. And so will you share that with the audience and take us?
Okay.
Do you remember you telling me this story?
I hope this is the same story. So I was at school about a month and a half before Dave got there. So I classed up. My entire class was Marines, and so like 20 or so, 15 or 20 Marines, and I didn't see many people outside of the Marines, and except for in rehearsals, and we had all services there in those rehearsals. And I showed up to this jazz band rehearsal one day, and I always tried to get in there so I could get the seat that I wanted, because you just sat wherever you ever wanted to. And somebody was in the third chair spot, and I was like, oh no, okay. And then somebody sat in the fourth spot, and I was like, oh no, okay. I did not want the ride chair, and so I was like, okay, I don't mind the lead bone. So I hurriedly put my horn together, and I jumped in that lead spot. And sometimes the Army would double book themselves, and we wouldn't have a full section. So probably that day, the Army was training somewhere else, and we only had 3 trombones. And so this petty officer in the Navy went to find another player out in the hall, and I guess Dave was walking by.
Well, they came to the practice rooms. I was down in the practice room.
Okay, yeah, they were really looking. So they brought Dave back, and so this nice petty officer in the Navy came over, and he was like, hey, that chair that I didn't want, the ride chair, he was like, hey, can you move over to the second spot? And I was like, okay. I was, I will, but I did not want it. And so Dave's over there putting his horn together, and he came in, and he, I think of Dave as a bass trombone player, but I didn't know him then. And he came in there with this little horn and sat down, and I was kind of so mad I didn't even want to look at him.
That's what you told me.
I was just kind of, I was thinking, I'm going to have to take solos now because this guy wants to play lead. And so we did our, he didn't even want to, I found out later. But we did our whole warm-up, run through all the scales and everything and the swings and stuff. And then they called the chart, and they said, we're going to pass this out. It's a time for love. Bill Evans.
Bill Watrous.
Bill Watrous, Time for Love. And I was like, oh no, please don't have a solo. And it was a whole trombone solo, but it was in the lead part. So I didn't have to play it. And I was watching, when the charts were coming out onto the stands, and I was so relieved. Okay, I don't have solos in this. And then, it's got this big sax beginning, and we're playing along, and the first time I ever heard this guy play, I was like, oh, I've been fangirl ever since, still today. It was so beautiful, and it was, a ballad, and it was so pretty.
And I was struggling to play that too.
So I wanted to jump over to your viewpoint. What was your view in this story here?
Well,
do you remember this whole moment?
I do.
Okay,
yeah, I do remember coming in because, what I had a hard time with it at the beginning was they wouldn't let me play bass trombone at that school.
Okay.
I did everything on tenor, and so I spent a lot of time on my own getting my bass horn chops back, because in boot camp I didn't play my instrument for 8 or 9 weeks,
Right.
So so when they went down to the practice rooms and grabbed me, I was working on my bass horn stuff, and then I had to go up and put together this little horn, and then they throw this solo in front of me.
So let's say, to be fair, you weren't in a great mood.
Well, so we were that's kind of like we meeting for the first time,
Right.
And you look back at it, and you look at the title of the song, "The Time for Love."
It was inevitable.
Right.
Yeah, because it was like before that. It was kind of, that school is kind of competitive, right? So everybody's always looking at each other because you're seeing each other for the first time. And
okay, let me stop you for a minute though, so our audience knows now. What school are we talking about?
We're talking about the Armed Forces School of Music.
There you go.
And at that school, they have different elements. They have the Navy element, the Marine Corps element, and the Army element.
Okay.
So, and so we're all intermixed in, and all they're doing is preparing us for once we get out into the fleet or the field. So, so I guess what ended up happening is we were kind of the top dog players, trombone players there. So we had the same instructor. What was his name?
Bowling.
Tim Bowling.
Yeah.
Same instructor. And he was an Army guy. And he was having a hard time with all the other bone players. So he challenged us to get together with the other bone players and play duets with them. Okay. You know, was what the thing. And then finally, when we were getting together, it started out like a conversation was, say, how are your guys doing? And they're not doing very good at all. How are your guys doing? Oh man, they suck. And so it was like, hey, why don't we get together and play? Right. And so everything is done by permission. So we have a
signed paper.
Yeah, signed by our teacher, because you can't have two people in the same practice room at the same time. At that school. Okay. So you have to get permission from the teacher. Yeah. So we had that. That's called a chit. So we had the chit, and we used to put it in the window when we were in there playing together, and we'd always get questioned about it. And it says, well, according to this, you're supposed to be playing duets with somebody else, and you're supposed to. And so we explained to whoever was on the duty that day. It's like, well, this is the situation. And that's how it it started, and we just built that relationship from there. And then and then she ended up transferring out before me to Hawaii. And I originally had orders to Japan. So it's like, how do we fix this?
But now, by then,
married,
right? Okay, that's what I was getting at. By then, the relationship had come together, not only with music, but in your own relationship, and knew that you loved each other. And so now you say, okay, we've got to come up with a plan, which was marriage. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just passed 30 years too.
Hey, congratulations! There you go.
It worked.
So that situation was a little more complicated for me, because I already had my orders to Japan, and they would have to do what's called an orders modification, which has to go through Bureau of Naval Personnel, and it just so happened that the guy that details out the assignments, it just so happened that he had a similar situation when he was at the school.
Okay.
And he pulled me aside when he came over to the school. They were having a big what they call an IG. The inspector general was there, and they go through all the curriculum and the administration stuff and see how things are running. So he met with me, and he pulled me aside, and he goes, hey, I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to tell you why. He goes, because it happened to me too.
Okay, right.
And so she had already graduated, and she was home on leave, and then she came back to the school, and we got married before she had to head out to Hawaii.
I think it was like 2 days together before I had to report to Hawaii.
Yeah, so we got married, and she flew out the next day.
Yeah.
So now, did both of you go out to Japan, or?
No, we both went to Hawaii.
Oh, you both went to Hawaii. Oh.
And it just so happened that the Marine Corps band and the Navy band's band room are across the street from each other. They were out there at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was really, and as the military goes, I had to get permission to have the day off to get married. So I had to put in my paper. And
sure.
And usually, you put it in somebody's inbox and it goes through the chain of command or whatever. But they told me, they said, you better walk this through to everybody. And I'll never forget, we had this funny, he was in charge of the drill band, the marching band stuff.
Right.
The head of that department. I had to go to him and have him sign it. And he was a hilarious guy. He was a flute player. And
you remember his name?
I do not remember his name, but I could see his face. I handed him that I handed him that paper, and he read what it was for, and he goes, "Are you sure this is what you want to do with your day off?" And everybody I took it to, they pulled me into their office, and they went round and round with me about it, and it was jokingly, it was funny,
right,
and I remember taking it to our trombone instructor, Tim Bowling, and he already knew, everybody already knew, and he was looking at me, and he's going, so you want to marry one of my students, huh? And then with the Marine Corps, it was like, so you want to marry one of my Marines?
Marines, yeah. I'm surprised they didn't ask you, well, let's see how well you play. Let's give you a test. And Kristine, on your side, did you have to go through any hoops and loops, or?
Not really, because I was finished. I was between duty stations by then. I graduated there, and I was on some little short leave, and then so I didn't have the hoops to jump through. Yeah, and when they started doing redoing my orders, I didn't know I was actually going to Hawaii until like the week I graduated.
Oh yeah.
Like it was like in that couple of weeks before graduation is when my orders finally came in. It took them a while to get there. So as far as I knew, I was still going to Japan. So.
It's funny, as you were telling the story, how much you brought into my mind. Your journey lines up with my son Jared and Maggie, because I can't tell you the names or what have you, but someone told him, look, you better get married before you go to Japan, and blah, blah, blah. And then she had to do hoops and loops. But anyway, the bottom line is they try to get that together before all the wheels started turning and going to Japan. Yeah, it's big when you go overseas too. Yeah, right. So I could see that would be a
because it becomes a money issue,
right,
for the military. Yeah. For us, we were on individual orders.
Yes. Yeah. So
it was a little bit different, but I can understand that. And I remember talking with Jared, and I remember talking with other people in that chain of command, because I was still in contact with a lot of those same people, and
exactly.
We used to talk about Jared and dealing with that situation, and I wanted to ensure they were going to take care of him.
Well, I mean, this is a side note. We'll go into that, but I'm going to come back to Christy on your video. That's what we're going to go into next. But for those that are listening, my son Jared's in the Navy now, and when he came out of college, UNM, we called David up. I knew Kristine, and they said, well, and actually, Kristine, he had thought about the Marines first, and we were like, Mom was like, and I think, if I remember correctly, Joe was like, well, what about swimming? I'm not too, and you said something like, you'll get the swimming down, no problem with that. So you were our key to the auditions and everything else there, and still is, and we thank you for that, of course. So Kristine, we've got this clip for you, for our audience. For those that are listening, they'll hear the number of you playing. Can you set us up and give the people that are listening to the podcast a sort of visual of what you're doing, and how you came about the idea and what you're playing?
So, I was teaching over in here in APS, and when COVID started, and I was trying to figure out some stuff to do with my band and orchestra kids, and actually gave them this assignment to do. A lot of players on the same video, they would just do a click track and send it to me. Right. And I thought, well, I'll give an example. So I made an example one for them, just a four part of me. And it was really fast, and it wasn't that great, but it put the point across to the kids. Here's what we're going to do. So then I just kind of got bored by the end of the summer that during 2020, and we weren't really going anywhere. It was pandemic and all that. So I contacted the arranger of this piece, Carl Lethe, up in Indiana, and I was like, hey, I played your national anthem for Tennessee All-State back like a year after he wrote it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, is it available? Is it even, is it even in print, And he just sent it to me. He sent me the score and all 8 parts. Wow. And I told him what I was wanting to do, and he said, hey, if you get that done, send it to me. I want to check it out. And I was like, wow. Yeah. He, gave me his blessing to do it. So I just put this in, and it's one of my favorite arrangements I love the national anthem all the time anyway. I love it when other people do it, and I love to perform it. But back in Tennessee Allstate, and I told Carl Lethe this too, I was like, back when we played this, I was on the lead on the melody, and I cracked a note, and I never forgave myself for it because it was the national anthem, and I was on the melody. And it was really super high, but I was I could not forgive myself. And he was like, he wrote me back. He was like, you got to forgive yourself for that, I was like, no. I'm going to do it I'm going to record it so I can fix it if anything happens. Yeah. And I think it turned out pretty good. It was my first try with green screen. I was doing some work just trying to learn audiovisual stuff to do when 2020 hit, Yeah. And so that's was my first try on green screen. And Dave took a trip that weekend, and when I got the music, and luckily because I had the whole living room torn up with green screen and boom mics and just lighting and everything I could try to figure out. It was my first try. So
So tell the audience what are the visuals going on for those that are listening? You're broken into groups, yes, segments. Yeah.
So each video of me is a part. So I think it's an 8-part or a 10-part or something. I think it's an 8-part. So each is a separate part trombone line, and I didn't want to, get in any trouble with copyright issues, so I went to a free photo website. I had been taking pictures of flags and stuff, but I really liked the internet ones better, and so I think it was Pixabay website. They have free stuff you can download their pictures, and so I just put like patriotic slideshow in the middle of.
Okay, cool. All right, let's take a look at it. Yeah, that is great. I mean,
thank you.
First of all, the arrangement is just top notch, beautiful.
It's so good. Yeah, I love that arrangement.
That's amazing. And so you then tell me you sent it out to your students. Is that what happened? To give them an example of what to do?
Oh, I did a different one for that one, but that was just an assignment. So I thought, well, if they're doing this in junior high, I can figure this out, at a little, a more professional level. I mean, I'm not a pro at it, but it gave me a lot of ideas for future stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now David, also you've been playing all over the world, and you gave us a clip here. Can you give us, the audience, a little setup on your clip? We won't be playing all of it, but we've got a snap of the clip that you give us. Tell us, the audience. Yeah. Do you remember what it was?
Is this the Navy clip?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So This is so at this time in the Navy band, I usually was the bass trombone player in the show band in Japan. Well, in all the bands, but this was when I was
featured in this one.
Yeah, so I was stationed in Japan, and so what happened was our lead bone player transferred out.
Oh,
and so we were gapped a lead bone player, and so it just so happened our tuba player also was a bass bone player.
Okay.
So Todd French is his name, and so I said, "Well, here I'll jump on the lead book if you want to take the bass book." So so that's what we did, and so the tune, I walk into rehearsal one day, and George Morris was the unit leader at the time, and trumpet player, the lead trumpet player, and he came in and he goes, "Hey, you want to do this tune?" And he threw it on the stand. And when somebody says you want to do this tune, that means yes, you're going to do this tune. So I knew, I knew the tune from the Blood, Sweat, and Tears alone, and then I also knew it from Kenton, the Kenton Big Band. Stan Kenton plays Chicago, and one of the bone players in different eras in the Kenton band, Dick Shearer, one of my heroes, So I was like, I'm all over this. I would love to do this, and so this particular show, I believe, is in Sasebo, Japan. We were doing they brought us down there to do. It was for a women's organization, a Seroptimus Club, I think. Mm. But they brought us down there to do a few shows, and we were featured at jazz festival, and then this was just a concert for them, and that was one of the things with Navy Band is doing concerts overseas is that you always play for a packed house. Yeah. And unfortunately in the States it's not like that. For military bands, Right. Yeah, because I can remember a few times where the band actually outnumbered the audience. But this particular show was that night, and yeah.
Okay, let's take a look. Man, there you go. That would get you going.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
So now, you guys are in the service, you're playing, your career's going on, and usually these episodes, I can almost say 100%, everyone I've talked to, including myself, life gets in the way. Your children, your careers are going on, but you've kept the music going on as well. And not only that, your children are playing, and so forth. We're going to get into the family side of it, but let me go back to the music education side, Kristine. You said recently now you're involved in a project with. I really don't even know how to go about explaining it. Tell me about it.
Well, if you heard of Suzuki strings,
Yes.
a lot of kids will take starting on like age 3 or 4 on violin. They'll get those teeny little violins and then grow with the violin.
Right.
Well, they started in Europe doing Suzuki brass. And I guess there's a little bit here in the States now too. So far, I think there's only a trumpet school book, one trumpet school book. So, like in strings, you'll have like book 1, violin book 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to like 9 or something. There's one book for trumpet right now that's all brass, and I'm taking a class this summer to teach Suzuki brass, which it involved an audition on your instrument, and you play a certain level, and they got right back to me and said, yeah, go to the next step. So then you have to take like a Suzuki Shinichi Suzuki method, like what did the person Suzuki feel about teaching, and there's books like Nurtured by Love, Nurtured by Love, or Nurtured with Love, or something that he wrote, and so there's that step. I think we had to read all that in strings at UNM, so string methods. So it was kind of already in my background. Actually, I love the book though. I've read it several times. And just the approach to it's very oral, so the teacher learns the music and teaches by ear, by rote, in that training. So anyway, I'm taking the class this summer, and it's in Utah, and I think the class filled up already. It's not till June, but they're full, both classes. I'm taking the first 2 books. So I think it's popular. It's only in Europe as far as I know.
Wow.
So
do you think this will expand in the future to Suzuki woodwinds and percussion and everything else?
My first question was, they sent me an email the other day and said, hey, make sure you memorize the first book, and this second book's not in print yet, but memorize this one too. So they sent me some stuff to memorize, and I was like, okay, yeah, let's get on this. And so I started opening their attachments, and I was like, wait a second. I remember years ago in the ITA, the journal, trombone journal, they had this the cover, I think that was the cover, of little children. They were like 4 years old playing alto trombones, and I that just came back to me right away, because any Suzuki teacher I've been talking to in strings are like, how are you going to do that with trombone? Right. I mean, I've had a student in my studio that was a retired oral surgeon or something. She was so tiny, she couldn't reach 6th position. Yeah, and that's the second note in the book. so in the trumpet book, and that's what they're wanting us to teach. So I was like, okay, I got their email, so I wrote them back and I said, what am I teaching? Am I teaching this in E flat or alto, or am I teaching this in C? What do you want me on tenor? What? So they just said, well, mostly what we've seen, they're like, I'm not a trombone player, but I think tenor. So I don't know how that's going to work with little, they don't have long arms, because 6th graders a lot of times can't reach.
Right.
But
Yeah, no, I understand. And David, you and I over coffee a while back, you told me your journey of music has gone into mental health and wellness of music. Can you talk a little bit about that with the audience? Do you remember our conversation about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it originated, like when I got out of the Navy, I went back to school. I went to UNM, got a psych degree with a concentration in addiction counseling. So I'm from the Pueblo of Laguna. My family's from the Pueblo of Laguna. So, and I know what the issues are in the community, and so I thought, maybe I could be of some help. So when I got my counseling license, I did my internship out there at the Pueblo of Laguna, and then I was hired on, and they know my music background, and so the Prevention Coalition out there, they approached me and asked me, they did a lot of community events, and so they approached me and asked me if there was a possibility that I could help them put together a Music is Healing presentation for the community. Yes. And so I have family members out there that actually that play, I have a couple of nephews that have a rock band, and one of my cousins is also a guitar player, and so I approached them about possibly helping me out with this, and so we were all in agreement, and but when it came down to the day, I was the only one that was able to do it. So so I just went in and kind of did an hour just talking about my background and then the history of my playing and what it's done for me, as far as my health, my mental health, and got them demonstrated just some of the things that you learn in elementary school, as far as tonality, major tonality, minor tonality, happy, sad, and I had written a meditation piece that I played for them, using different, I brought some of the kids up to help me. They played different instruments behind me as I played this meditation piece. And so through my association with the Pueblo of Laguna, I was introduced to some agency called at the University of Iowa. It's the Addiction Technology Transfer Center at the University of Iowa. So it's for Native American, Alaska Native program. And so I explained that to them, and they were this was at the beginning of COVID, where everything went online, where everything went to a Zoom format. So their prevention program, the PTTC, they asked me, is it possible for you, could you do the Music is Healing for us on a Zoom format? And I was like, I would love to, but I have no idea how I would do that, because I only know how to do this live, and so it sat, there it sat for that. I said, let me see if I could figure something out. So there it sat for over a year. Wow. And then, so as I was thinking about this, I have a very good friend that I was stationed in Japan with in the Navy band, Mike Bogart, who is one of the trumpet players for Tower of Power now. So when he was in the Navy, so he got out of the Navy, went on the road with Maynard Ferguson, and then got the job with Tower of Power. And he was on Tower for a little while, for like 10 years, and he left Tower to go back into the Navy to earn his retirement. So when he came back into the Navy, one of his jobs that he took was as an addictions counselor. so he did a whole tour as an addictions counselor. So when I heard this and I was thinking about putting this, how am I going to do this? Music is healing.
Sure.
He's the first guy I thought about. You know what? I need Bogey. I need Bogey on this to help me out with this.
Right.
So, so time passes by, and he's back. He's retired from the Navy, and he's back on the road with Tower. Yeah. And they happen to be playing in Santa Fe. So, I don't Facebook, but Kristine Facebook. So we contacted him through her Facebook, and he got back to me. You know, a couple days later. Like, I think it was the day they were flying out. You know, and he's like, oh man, I just saw your message. So he gave me his phone number. We started texting back and forth, and I started talking to him about this. And so we came up with a format and an idea of how to do this and how to present it.
Sure.
And so the idea of the music is healing, we took from nature. We wanted to entitle this The Nature of Sound.
Yes.
And, so we took sounds from nature and, you know, and Mother Earth, you know, what the earth provides, you know, and so, and how man has taken sounds from nature and reproduced them in instruments.
Correct.
You know, there's different instruments, like using the voice and and the drum and
flute.
Flute, chimes, bells, singing bowls, all these different instruments that people use for healing. And we kind of took it from there, and he wrote a piece that we presented during that, and that it's in a remembrance of for the MMIW, murdered and missing Indigenous women, and then I did my meditation piece, and we overdubbed him playing. You know, we took all these instruments and we just laid a foundation, and then I played over the top of that, and then we added him at the end. And you know, I kind of wanted him to play over, like in the pockets while I was playing, but he was sitting the night he got here, and he was I played it for him. He was going, I don't know where I'm going to fit in this. And he goes, what is this? What's the tonality? Where is the foundation of this? And he goes, does it have chords? And I go, yes, it has chords, but let me see if I can remember them. He goes, it would be nice. So he made me play piano. He made me record a piano track, and then he added his horn in at the end over this song. Yeah, and it came out really nice. You know, but so that was the idea. Just using the nature of sound, you know, and being able to use music as a healing source, and that was more of kind of an introduction. And they want us to do a second segment of that. And so the idea behind the second segment is going to be how cultures have taken their cultural or traditional music and transformed into mainstream mainstream formats, you know. And there's a lot out there. Like I think of like the when I listen to the jazz stations, like African jazz, you know, Hugh Masekela, you know, and that type, and then the indigenous people here in the States, the way they've transformed their music into mainstream, and then how classical composers have taken melodies from different cultures and put them into their music. And one of the things I was talking with the band director over at Sandia High School, we were talking about Dvorak and the New World Symphony, and how Dvorak was supposedly took the melodies from Native American folk songs. And so we were talking about it, and we were like, and he was like, I looked into that, and the research, I don't know, I can't find any research to prove that, you know.
To prove it,
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Tyler North, you know how he is.
Oh yeah, Tyler. We can go on for days about Tyler. Yeah, he's a good man. So that takes me into you all and that connection of music to your family. Your children play, pardon the pun, but blow the horn of your family a little bit, and your children, they play music. Tell us about them.
Well, our oldest has a music education degree now from Northern Arizona, and she taught on a reservation up in Washington State, a high school up there. A couple of years, I can't remember when she started, but then our middle daughter, she had some illness when we first moved here, and it was part of, no one suggested this to her, but it was part of her therapy for herself. She was in chemo at the time, and she started writing like rock operas, and she started doing some really, really funny stuff and she got her own channel on YouTube, and just kind of made light of life at the time, but it's some funny stuff that she's put out. She likes to write, and you can really hear like a Beatles influence in her music, and like time wise, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about with the Beatles, but they're not always like stuck in,
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And then our youngest is he's finishing up in college. Dave just saw him. You want to talk about what?
Yeah, so he's studying percussion at Northern Arizona University, and he's finishing up this summer. But I just went up last Wednesday and saw him, or Tuesday night I saw him play his last show with their big band, their jazz one band, and he's developed into an amazing player, an amazing drummer, and he's a percussionist, so he plays everything. But
can we just say Mr. Goodrum was his teacher,
and as you know, I mean, you were his teacher.
You know him well.
Yeah. Hey, I taught him everything he knows.
Of course.
I'll take all the credit, but
yeah.
Look, as a parent of also of a son that plays, talk about that feeling of seeing your children. And do you all play together? First of all, do you two get together and just jam tonight after the podcast, or do you find time to play together at home? And
we played some in January. We met another couple that plays trombone, and we performed Haydn Achieved is glorious work. We performed at a little chamber concert in January with those two quartet.
Yeah, and we like Christmas. Yeah. We've done like Christmas duets and like go play for stuff out in the Pueblo. Yeah, right. This before COVID, they haven't had any things. We did a Veterans Day. Yeah. We go out there and play the duet version of the national anthem for them.
Cool.
And then when the kids are here, we'll get together.
Right.
We played like when our daughter was home for Christmas. We did Christmas trios out there for my elderly uncle. He doesn't get out much, so we went. And he used to be a trombone player back in the days, so we went out and we played Christmas carols at his house, and
that's great.
And then we've done like vocal things too. We'll try to.
We
sing.
play in the symphony in the here in town. We play
the Health Sciences Orchestra.
Yeah, so we started that. I was invited by a cello player, a teacher here in town, and I was just looking for trombone players to play, and she's like, "Yeah, we need trombone players." And so I played a couple of concerts with them, and the trombone section's hard to fill for that group. And I started learning viola June 2 years ago, and I really wanted to play in the section, and they needed more in the section anyway. So I said, if I find you another trombone player, can I try out so they're like, yeah, you're welcome to play either. So I asked Dave, and he was willing. So he's been playing behind me, and I'm in the viola section now. He's behind me.
That's great. That's great. Well, before I let you go, talk to our audience about what you've been all talking and demonstrate about the power of music and why it's so important to keep music in your life and what it does for the spirit and the soul.
I think for me, it kind of keeps it's grounding. I've always been around it my whole life. My parents were musicians. My grandparents were musicians. My siblings all played. Mm-hmm. It's just something that's been a part of me. And when I'm away from it, it has an impact. It's like when I retired from the Navy and started studying psychology and stuff, I stepped away from music, and I could really, you get anxious, and so you have to definitely jump back in. It's grounding, and I've been around it so much. I mean, even all through high school, and playing in all the extracurricular groups, all state, all region bands. Right. When I was going to NAU, playing in the jazz band, having the opportunity to play at the Playboy Jazz Festival, playing alongside, guest artists, really great guest artists, man, that I would have never imagined ever playing, Alan Vizzuti, Louis Belson, Rufus Reed, Bill Watrous, and then later on getting opportunities to play with Bill Watrous in his band, and then alongside of him on side gigs, backing Johnny Mathis and and Temptations and stuff like that, so it's and then in Japan, and getting out into the community and being a part of that the musical community in those foreign countries, as we both done. It really feeds the soul, and it becomes such a part of you that it's you can't imagine not doing it. Right.
It's a part of your DNA. It's like your own. Yeah. And Kristine, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I've just been mentioning to people lately that it feels like music, not this, but it feels like, an old friend, like a good friend. But I've noticed lately, since, all the pandemic and everything, it's like, I don't know if you've heard of a sound bath. Arson told us about. He got to join some sound baths, and look that up if you haven't. It's really cool. It feels like music is at more of a cellular level, if that makes any sense. It just feels like it connects to the nervous system or something, sympathetic nervous system. It's therapeutic.
And we in our Music is Healing presentation, that's something we discuss, about the vibration of the earth, the frequency of the electromagnetic field is the same frequency as the alpha waves in our brain. And it's the calm that we have at that level. Yeah.
It's, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but it's like this drug, a positive that will stimulate your soul. For me, I like your word grounding, Dave. We we just recently had a death in the family. And when my mom died way back when, I played my horn there at the memorial. And when we went back to Louisiana for the funeral, so much of the funeral was a spiritual music part of it in the church, and that grounding. And so for those people that are listening that have played in the past, in high school, have given it up, you say what, Kristine?
Come back. I really hope that anybody that has played an instrument will play it for life. I really do. It speaks to me.
Yeah. And you can come back. I was a pretty good, like you played baseball, I think you said pitcher, David. I was a pretty good hurdler back in the day, but it would be pretty ugly for me to do that right now. Or entertaining. I don't know. It might be pretty good for YouTube. I don't know. But you know what? God bless you both. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. I really do appreciate it. I'm so glad we got a chance to do this and just sit down and talk about something that we all love, and that's music.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to be here and discuss and talk about, the adventure.
Yep, the journey. And man, what a journey you all have had to have it a key role in your marriage, in your family, and it's such a blessing. Thanks so much. Hey, I want to thank also the people that are listening and watching on YouTube. You can find this podcast at any of the podcast venues where you find your favorite podcasts. OTP is on the podium. We thank the Natseways for being on the podium. And with that, go on out and play all the right notes.
You've been listening to The Podium. If you would like to be a guest on The Podium, email the show at onthe2@gmail.com. That's ONTHEPODIUMTOO @gmail.com.